One last conversation on this PreCast bonus episode of the Locked On Commanders podcast. Zach Selby of the Washington Commanders is here to help us put some final thoughts on record as we get set for the Minnesota Vikings to come to town. All of that coming up on this episode of Locked On Commanders.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in, Commanders fans, to the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And welcome into this PreCast bonus episode of the Locked On Commanders podcast. First time we're doing this, so make sure you drop us a comment in the YouTube comments there. Hit us on Twitter. Let us know what you think of it, what you like, what you would like to see added in the future. We're taking suggestions here, guys. We can't promise that we'll execute everything, but we're definitely taking suggestions. This is a show that we're doing for you guys, a little bit of an extra one last look at the upcoming game at the Washington Commanders before we reach kickoff. Of course, this episode, all of our episodes available on YouTube, the WSA 9 Plus app on your Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, or wherever you get podcasts. I am David Harrison. For those of you who don't already know, covering your Commanders for Commander Country, a part of Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation family of sites. My co-host, Chris Russell, the Rooster from Team 980, not here for this bonus episode. Typically not going to be here because this isn't really about Chris and I talking. This is about getting the opinions of some other people. Zach Selby here with us today. Plan on having him be a regular part of this bonus PreCast episode, give you some insight from inside the organization. And you know what? Bonus episodes are about 12 to 15 minutes long. So before I run us completely out of time here, let's get over to my conversation with Zach Selby, senior writer of the Washington Commanders. All right, guys, now joining me here on this Locked On Commanders bonus episode for all your pregame information and things that you need to know heading into Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. Zach Selby, senior writer for your Washington Commanders, literally your inside man on Twitter at Zach Selby WC if you're not already following. And Zach, before we get to the game, unfortunately, some sad news for the organization that happened literally on my commute up here to the facility. The passing of Dave Butz. Go ahead and kind of talk about what that means for this organization.
Yeah, I mean, Dave Butz is a legend in the Washington franchise, honestly. I mean, 5th all-time in sacks at 59. I mean, and just looking at some of his, some of his stats and things, you can tell how much he loved the franchise and how dedicated he was to this sport. I mean, there's a really great story about him checking himself out of a hospital before a game against the Jets and getting the game-winning sack against Ken O'Brien and then going back to the hospital the next day where he was there for the next few days. He's a guy that, you didn't really hear too much about, but Joe thought that he's a gentle giant. And I mean, we're all going to miss him. Thoughts and prayers go out with the rest of the family to make sure that, they're okay in this time of loss for him.
Absolutely. And head coach Ron Rivera communicated kind of the same sentiment from the organization as well. I mean, A guy that's going to be honored not just by the Washington organization and the fans, but also Purdue. I mean, he had a very storied college career as well, so certainly a loss. But in the spirit of Dave Butz, I mean, he would want everybody to do what? Move on? Yep. You got a game to win. Worry about the Minnesota Vikings. Don't worry about me. That's kind of the spirit he would have. And unfortunately, we've got some players that are not going to be participating. Right. The main ones, Cole Holcomb, Jahan Dotson, obviously is still going to be out. But, I mean, let's talk about that linebacker position because that's certainly looking thin right now.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, Cole Holcomb being out last week kind of changed up their plans a little bit. Had to go a little more 5 defensive linemen in the Cinco package that they did. So now they've got John Boss, who's going to have an expanded role. Jamin Davis, who is a player on the rise, according to Rivera, as he was talking about earlier today in his press conference, how he's really limiting his errors in a lot of ways. And they also activated Scoot Harris, Dijon Harris from the practice squad. So he's going to have a little bit more expanded role. But it's definitely in a position that was already kind of thin, it's even thinner against an offense that is pretty decent. It has a lot of really good playmakers, so we'll see how they go. But I think it's going to be probably a little bit more similar to what they were doing against the Colts last week. A little bit more 5 defensive linemen out there to kind of substitute, and probably also Kamren Curl is going to be probably calling the plays again. Yep. And he said earlier this week that he really enjoyed that, and Jato Rios said that he really stepped up and took charge of that role. And this is one of the smartest guys. Yeah, not just in the secondary, but on the defense as a whole. So I think he handled that position really well. I think he's going to be doing well again this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, if you watch that defense against the Indianapolis Colts, it really didn't look like a unit that was missing kind of their key communicator. No. I think Cam definitely did a very good job.
Of course, Zach, injury is nothing new to this Commanders team, unfortunately. Really just, that's the business of the National Football League, too. But some key ones, obviously, for this team. And unfortunately, those injuries, part of the reason that Chris and I both, and our listeners and viewers know this and don't like it necessarily, but Chris and I both picking the Vikings to win this weekend. Chris has the Vikings winning 24-21. I've actually got a little bit steeper, 23-17. Okay. A one-score loss either way, which means there should be an opportunity towards the end of the game to pull this thing out. If they do, tell the good people why the Commanders come away with this win. Because I know, and just to be clear, this is not just team employee talking. He legit thinks that the Commanders absolutely have a chance to pull out this win.
Well, yeah, it's absolutely a winnable game. Now, that's not a knock against the Vikings because they are a very good team. Rivera said they're under the radar, and they are. You don't really hear about a lot of people talk about them like the Eagles or some of those other top teams in the NFC or even the NFL. But, what I do like about both of your scores is that it's probably going to come down to the last drive. And you look at the way Washington has played these last 3 games, it has come down to the last drive, especially against the Colts last week. And they've normally been able to pull it out. But I think the reason why I say it's probably more winnable is because I look at the way Kirk Cousins is playing, and he's better than what he was against when he was with Washington. But I think there are some issues that he has in terms of feeling pressure at certain points and holding onto the ball for a little bit too long, not recognizing that pressure. And I think the way this defensive line is playing right now, they can probably take advantage of that in a lot of ways. Now, they're not going to have Chase Young, so that's unfortunate. He's going to take another week to recover, but they still got Montez Sweat. They still got Case Tuhill and James Smith-Williams, who are both pretty solid rotational guys. Yep. And then Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, they're both beasts out there right now. Deron Payne is leading the team in sacks. I think this is going to be a chance for them to really feast in a similar way that they've been able to do so far in the past 3 games.
Absolutely. Either way, it's going to be a fun matchup. Zach, you're going to be there. Obviously, the Commanders are going to be there. Locked On Commanders will be there as well. I'll be there. Chris will be there. Hopefully, you're all going to be there. If you see us, make sure you say hi. And if you don't see us, at least give us a follow on Twitter. Zach is at Zach Selby WC. Check it out. Everything. You have a Keys to Victory. Is it Keys to Victory, Keys to the Game column that's coming out too?
It's Keys to the Game. Logan Paulson and I kind of go back and forth on 3 big questions. One of them is, how can Washington take advantage of Kirk Cousins' limitations? Mm-hmm. There's another question we're going to have about how can we see the offense take more advantage of first and second downs, and then we're going to talk about some key matchups. One of them is going to be Justin Jefferson. One of them is going to be Harrison Smith on defense, who is a quality safety, probably a lot of people say a Hall of Fame caliber safety. So be on the lookout for that sometime this weekend.
Absolutely, and because we know you can't get enough Commanders content, also be on the lookout for John Bostic appearing on the Locked On Gators podcast this Sunday, so that'll drop as well. Commanders everywhere, and it's a good time to do so. Let's get a 4-game win streak going heading into Monday night against Philadelphia. That would be amazing. Zach, appreciate your time.
Appreciate you, man.
This bonus precast episode of the Locked On Commanders podcast is brought to you by Prediction Strike, the world's first sports stock market. You can now invest in professional athletes just like stocks. It's a low-risk alternative sports betting, and athlete prices move based on performance and supply and demand. So I bet you Terry McLaurin's price probably going up quite a bit these days, but you could still get in there. Maybe it gets even higher. For example, if you invested in Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts a year ago, today you'd be up 48.2%. On the flip side of that, Kyle Pitts, you would be down 44.12%. It's all the fun of the stock market, but it's football and it's sports related. All athletes benefit as well, and they're entitled to a percentage of their market cap. With 2.5% trade fees, it's the lowest in real money sports. Everyone knows you should be investing, but why not invest in something you actually know about and care about as a football fan? So download Prediction Strike, the app, and use the code LOCKED for a free share when you sign up and make a first deposit of $20 or more. Again, this promo code LOCKED for a special one-time giveaway. And Prediction Strike is choosing one person from those who sign up with the promo code LOCKED and makes a deposit to win 100 free random shares. If that's Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills quarterback, those shares can be worth up to $3,000. Invest in what you know on Prediction Strike, the stock market for sports. This episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. Speaking of stakes, you want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs. Post your job, then you add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experiences so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. One more bit of information from our friends at BetOnline coming up in this precast episode of Locked On Commanders.
The 6-1 and NFC North leading Vikings open as 2.5-point road chalk versus the 4-4 Commanders. Sharps hit -2.5, and the number crept up to -4 before Sharps bought back on the Commanders +4, moving the spread to the current number, Vikings -3.5. Overall, the bet count is pretty choppy, but 62% of the early cash is back in the Commanders.
Thanks again for checking out this precast bonus episode of Locked On Commanders podcast. I've been your host, David Harrison, writer for SI.com's Fan Nation's Commander Country. Make sure you're checking out the show 5 days a week, the regular show, also this bonus episode. Looking to make this a weekly thing, guys. So again, leave us your feedback in the comment section. Hit us up on Twitter. Let us know what you think, what you want to see. Looking maybe there's some players involved in this precast episode of Locked On Commanders. So think of some players maybe that you want to hear about or hear from, and we'll see what we can do. Think outside the box, too. Taylor Heineke talks every day after the game. He talks in the locker room. You know Terry McLaurin's going to talk in the locker room every single week. So think outside the box, some guys that you don't necessarily normally hear from that maybe you'd want to hear from on this precast episode. In the meantime, we thank you, of course, for making the Locked On Commanders podcast first listener, first view of the day. If you got anything you want to discuss with us or comments about this episode, hit us up, LockedOnWashingtonCommanders@gmail.com, or call in and hit the line at 301-615-3577 for my buddy. You love him or you love to hate him, Chris the Rooster Russell from the Russell and Medhurst Show on the Team 980 with Pete Medhurst. I'm David Harrison, once again, writer for Fan Nation, Commander Country at SportsIllustrated.com. If you're out and about, please be safe, be kind to one another, and thank you for joining me right here on the Locked On Commanders podcast.